Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the ancient dragon sage who forged the sword. Queen of Millis Naruto x Ghislaine Dedoldia Mushoku Tensei. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The legend stirs. Heat shimmered above ancient stones, distorting the air like water. Ghislaine Dedoldia crouched among wind-twisted pines, her feline eyes narrowed against the harsh mountain light. 3 days she'd stalked these highlands, following whispers and fragments of lore that spoke of the blade. 3 days without proper rest, sustained by dried meat and determination. Her tawny fur rippled as a chill breeze cut through the afternoon warmth, carrying unfamiliar scents from the valley below. North for power, south for glory, she muttered, reciting the cryptic directions purchased from a one-eyed merchant in Millis. East for wisdom, west for the truth. The leopard beast woman unsheathed her sword, not the legendary weapon she sought, but a respectable blade that had tasted the blood of demon and man alike. Its familiar weight centered her thoughts. Ancestral instincts prickled beneath her skin as she surveyed the sprawling expanse of the beast nation's northern territory, where civilization thinned into wilderness and magic thickened like honey. Somewhere among these peaks lay answers. Somewhere, the Sword Queen of Millis waited, or at least the knowledge of where it had been hidden centuries ago. The blade that could cut through anything, even the veil between worlds. The weapon forged by the mythical dragon sage himself. A distant howl echoed across the ravine, answered by 3 more from different directions. Not wolves. The pitch was wrong, too deliberate. Hunting parties. Human, most likely, or perhaps a mixed band of mercenaries. Ghislaine's whiskers twitched in irritation. Competition. More fools seeking what they cannot comprehend, she growled, leaping from her perch to a lower outcropping with inhuman grace. Her movements made barely a sound as she descended the craggy hillside, each precise footfall finding purchase where others would falter and fall. The valley darkened beneath gathering clouds as Ghislaine tracked the hunting party's movements. Their carelessness offended her warrior's sensibilities. Broken branches, disturbed earth, the lingering scent of unwashed bodies and cheap metal. Amateurs who relied on numbers rather than skill. Yet they moved with purpose, following a path that corresponded too closely with her own research. Someone had talked. Someone always did, when enough gold changed hands. Twilight settled over the mountains like a bruise by the time Ghislaine located their camp. 7 men and 3 women, arranged around 2 small fires. Their weapons, a motley assortment of sea-erved blades and staves, lay within easy reach. 2 wore the distinctive embroidered armor of the Holy Kingdom of Millis, though without official insignia. Church agents working unofficially, then. Interesting. A tall figure circled the perimeter, the sentry, presumably. His movements betrayed formal military training, unlike his companions. Ghislaine's interest sharpened. Not entirely amateurs after all. She slipped deeper into shadow, her mind calculating odds and advantages. 10 opponents, 2 with formal combat training, the rest unknowns. Not impossible odds, but unnecessary risk when stealth would serve better. She would wait, listen, learn what they knew. Hours passed. The camp quieted as sleep claimed all but the sentry and a silver-haired woman who pored over parchments by firelight. Ghislaine edged closer, her sensitive ears straining to catch their hushed conversation. The temple should be less than a day's journey northwest, the woman said, tracing a line on what appeared to be a map. If the translation is correct, the Guardian's seal remains intact. The sentry grunted. And if it's not, we've lost 3 men already. Then we'll have fewer shares to distribute. The woman's voice held no sympathy. The church wants confirmation, not excuses. If the dragon sage's weapon truly exists, its power belongs in Millis' hands. The church's hands, you mean? Is there a difference? Their laughter rasped like steel on stone, setting Ghislaine's teeth on edge. So they sought the same prize, with even less understanding of its significance than she had feared. The Sword Queen wasn't merely a weapon, it was history incarnate, forged in dragon fire and tempered with chakra from another world. Its creation marked the beginning of an era. Its loss, the end of one. In the wrong hands. A twig snapped underfoot as Ghislaine shifted position. The sentry's head jerked up, hand reaching for his blade. She froze, cursing her carelessness. Fatigue made fools of even the strongest warriors. Something out there, he hissed, rising. The silver-haired woman folded her map. Beast or man? Neither. The sentry's voice tightened. Something else. Ghislaine prepared to retreat, but a new sensation froze her in place. A pressure that descended like invisible water, filling her lungs and pressing against her skull. Magic, but unlike any she had encountered in her years as a sword master. Ancient, vast, aware. The forest fell silent. Even insects ceased their nighttime chorus as the pressure intensified. The camp's sleeping figures stirred restlessly, responding unconsciously to the sudden change. A flash illuminated the mountain range. Not lightning, but something deeper, golden red like sunset concentrated into a single pulse. The pressure vanished, leaving Ghislaine gasping for breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The camp erupted into chaos. Weapons. The sentry shouted. Form up. But it wasn't Ghislaine they sensed. Something moved through the forest with purpose, something that bent shadows and silenced birds. The beast woman found herself caught between curiosity and instinctual caution. Whatever approached was neither predator nor prey in any conventional sense. The silver-haired woman raised her hands, lips moving in silent incantation. A pale blue barrier flickered into existence around the camp's perimeter, standard church defensive magic. It won't hold, Ghislaine whispered to herself, though she couldn't have explained the certainty behind those words. The barrier shattered seconds later, fragments of blue light dissolving into the night. A figure stood at the camp's edge, tall, clad in simple clothes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the firelight. His hair gleamed golden with streaks of crimson, falling past broad shoulders. Most striking were the marks on his face. 3 whisker-like lines on each cheek that seemed to shift and deepen as he surveyed the startled group. "You're looking in the wrong place," he said. Voice resonant but quiet, as if he rarely used it for conversation. "Go home while you can." The sentry recovered first, sword drawn and pointed. "Identify yourself." ASM. Eel flickered across the stranger's face, there and gone like summer lightning. "No one of consequence. He's lying," the silver-haired woman said, eyes narrowed. "That energy, he's connected to what we seek." She gestured sharply. 2 men rushed the stranger from opposite sides, blades gleaming. Ghislaine leaned forward, curious how this unfolding tableau would play out. Would this golden-haired interloper die for his bravado? Or prove himself something more? The answer came with breathtaking simplicity. The stranger didn't draw a weapon. He barely seemed to move. Yet somehow both attackers found themselves sprawled on the ground, one clutching a broken wrist, the other struggling for breath against an invisible pressure. "I said," the stranger repeated, "you're looking in the wrong place. The temple you seek was destroyed 3 centuries ago." The silver-haired woman's face contorted with rage. "Impossible. Our information is incomplete." The stranger's eyes reflected the firelight strangely, pupils contracting vertically like a cat's. "Or a dragon's. The Sword Queen isn't there. It never was." Ghislaine's breath caught. This man spoke with absolute certainty, as one who knew rather than believed. The mercenaries sensed it too, that disquieting confidence that couldn't be dismissed as mere bravado. "Take him," the woman commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. What followed could scarcely be called a battle. The stranger moved with liquid grace, each motion economical and precise. He used no weapons, no visible magic, yet bodies fell before him like autumn leaves. Not dead. Ghislaine could hear their groans and curses, but thoroughly incapacitated. The sentry lasted longest, his military training evident in his disciplined defense, but even he succumbed to a series of strikes too rapid for Ghislaine to follow. Within moments, only the silver-haired woman remained standing, her pale barrier reconstructed around herself alone. Fear had replaced anger in her eyes. "What are you?" she whispered. The stranger approached her barrier, studying it with detached interest. "Something old," he replied, raising one hand. His fingertips brushed the magical shield, which dissolved at his touch like morning mist. "Something that remembers when your church still understood what they claimed to protect." The woman collapsed, though whether from terror or some unseen technique. Ghislaine couldn't tell. The stranger stood alone among the fallen, his posture relaxing as the threat dissipated. For a moment, weariness seemed to settle over him, not physical exhaustion, but something deeper. Older, Then his head turned, gaze settling unerringly on Ghislaine's hiding place. You can come out now. I've no quarrel with you, Sword Master. Ghislaine tensed, instincts warring between flight and confrontation. Pride won. She emerged from the shadows, hand resting casually on her sword hilt. How did you know I was there? She demanded, maintaining distance. The stranger's eyes had returned to a startlingly human blue. You smell of sword oil and determination. A distinctive combination. Something about his casual assessment both irritated and intrigued her. And you smell of secrets and power, she countered. Who are you to interfere with my hunt? Your hunt. One golden eyebrow arched upward. These mountains don't belong to you or them. I meant the sword. The change was subtle but immediate, a tensing of shoulders, a narrowing of gaze. What do you know of the sword? Enough to seek it. Ghislaine lifted her chin, defiance asking the tension coiling through her muscles. Enough to recognize someone who knows more than they should. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling fire and the occasional moan from the incapacitated mercenaries. The stranger studied her with unsettling intensity, as if reading a language written beneath her skin. Ghislaine Dedoldia, he finally said. North God style. Reputation for honor in a profession not known for it. It was Ghislaine's turn for surprise. You have me at a disadvantage. Most people do. A hint of humor colored his voice. They call me Naruto. The name meant nothing to her. Yet something about it resonated like a plucked string. Just Naruto. Just Naruto. He gestured at the unconscious mercenaries. They'll recover by morning. I suggest you be elsewhere by then. And where should I be? Ghislaine challenged, irritated by his presumption. Somewhere not chasing legends that will only bring you grief. He turned as if to leave, then paused. Though legends have a way of finding those who truly need them. Cryptic nonsense helps neither of us, Ghislaine snapped. If you know where the Sword Queen is, speak plainly or stand aside. Naruto's expression softened into something resembling pity. The sword isn't what you think it is. What any of you think it is. Then tell me what it is. A burden. The simple word carried unexpected weight. One I wouldn't wish on anyone, least of all someone with genuine skill. Before Ghislaine could respond, a tremor shook the ground beneath them. Not an earthquake. Something deeper, more localized. The campfire flames bent horizontally, drawn toward the northwest like iron to a lodestone. Naruto's head snapped up, eyes widening. No, he whispered. It's too soon. Another pulse, stronger than the first, rippled through the earth. Ghislaine staggered, maintaining her balance only through years of combat training. The stranger, Naruto, seemed unaffected physically, his expression had transformed to one of focused alarm. What's happening? Ghislaine demanded. Something that shouldn't be possible. He gazed northwest, toward the mountains that separated the Beast Nation from the kingdom of Asura. The seal is breaking. What seal? Instead of answering, Naruto closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. The whisker marks on his cheeks deepened, darkening from pale lines to pronounced black slashes. When his eyes opened again, they had changed, the pupils elongated to vertical slits surrounded by brilliant azure that seemed to glow with inner light. Go back to your people, Sword Master, he said, his voice resonating with harmonics that hadn't been present before. This isn't your fight. Ghislaine's pride flared. Don't presume to tell me. It's not presumption. Naruto cut her off with uncharacteristic sharpness. It's warning. What's awakening is beyond your experience or ability. Another tremor, stronger still. In the distance, something roared, a sound like mountains colliding, echoing across valleys and through forests. Birds erupted from trees in dark clouds, fleeing the disturbance. Naruto cursed in a language Ghislaine didn't recognize. Ancient words that seemed to bend the air around them. With fluid grace, he removed his simple outer robe, revealing arms covered in spiraling patterns, not tattoos, but symbols that shifted and moved beneath his skin like living things. Last chance, he said, the markings beginning to glow with golden light. Walk away. Forget the sword. Live your life. Ghislaine drew her blade in answer. I don't abandon my objectives. Something like resigned respect flickered across Naruto's features. Stubbornness transcends worlds, I suppose. He sighed. Stay behind me, then. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. Before she could protest this high-handed command, Naruto made a series of complex gestures with his hands, too fast for even her trained eyes to follow. The symbols on his arms flared brighter, and suddenly the air around him shimmered with energy. "Hold on to something," he warned. The world blurred. Ghislaine felt herself lifted, carried, rushing through space faster than thought. Her stomach lurched in protest as mountains, valleys, and forests streaked past in indistinguishable smears of color. The sensation lasted only seconds before reality reasserted itself with jarring abruptness. They stood atop a barren peak overlooking a massive crater. At its center, something pulsed with malevolent red light, a crystalline structure half embedded in stone. Its facets reflecting and refracting the strange illumination like blood-filled prisms. The air around it wavered, distorted by heat or power or both. Ghislaine fought to regain her equilibrium, sword still clutched in white-knuckled fingers. "What? How did you?" "Flying Thunder God technique," Naruto replied absently, his attention fixed on the crater below. "Modified for this world's physics." None of those words made sense in that order. Ghislaine swallowed her questions, focusing instead on the immediate threat. Whatever that crystal was, it radiated wrongness, a fundamental violation of natural law that set her nerves on edge. "What is that thing?" she demanded. "A fragment." Naruto's expression darkened. "Part of something that should have remained dormant for another 1,000 years at least. Someone's accelerated the timeline." "A fragment of what?" "The sword's opposite. Its antithesis." He stepped closer to the crater's edge. "Where the Sword Queen creates, this destroys. Where the blade brings order, this brings chaos." As if responding to his words, the crystal pulsed brighter, its light bleeding from red to purple. Cracks appeared in its surface, spreading like veins across its facets. Something within moved, straining against its crystalline prison. "It's hatching," Ghislaine realized aloud. Naruto nodded grimly. "And we can't let what's inside escape." He raised his hands, and power surged around him. Not magic as Ghislaine understood it, but something older, more primal. The air crackled with energy as golden light coalesced between his palms, condensing into a spiraling sphere. "Stay here," he ordered, then leapt. Ghislaine watched in astonishment as Naruto descended into the crater, moving faster than any human should be capable of. He landed before the crystal, the golden sphere in his hand expanding to twice its original size. "Seal reformation technique," he shouted, voice carrying clearly despite the distance. "Dragon-style containment." He slammed the sphere into the crystal. Light exploded outward, gold meeting purple in violent collision. The shockwave raced up the crater walls, forcing Ghislaine to brace herself against sudden hurricane winds. Through squinted eyes, she watched Naruto battle against whatever force resided within the crystal. His form blurred with speed, hands weaving complex patterns as the golden energy fought to contain the pulsing darkness. For a moment, it seemed he would succeed. The cracks in the crystal began to seal, the malevolent light dimming. Then something went catastrophically wrong. A roar shook the mountain, and the crystal exploded. Shards flew outward like shrapnel, narrowly missing Naruto as he threw up a hasty energy barrier. From the shattered remains rose a serpentine form composed of darkness and purple flame, not fully corporeal, but substantial enough to radiate malice like physical heat. "Kurama," Naruto called out, his voice changing, deepening. "I need you." The whisker marks on his cheeks darkened further, spreading across his face like living tattoos. His eyes shifted from blue to red, pupils slitting further. Most shocking was the golden energy that now enveloped him completely, forming the translucent silhouette of a massive fox around his human form. Ghislaine's breath caught. The transformation wasn't just visual, the very air seemed to bend around him. Reality acknowledging something beyond its normal parameters. Power rolled off him in waves, ancient and wild and barely contained. The serpentine entity howled, a sound that stead simultaneously as noise and as pressure against the mind. It lunged at Naruto, darkness extending like tentacles. What followed defied Ghislaine's understanding of combat. Naruto moved with impossible speed, the fox silhouette moving with him. Where darkness touched golden energy, it sizzled and recoiled. They fought across the crater floor, up its walls, occasionally becoming airborne in defiance of gravity itself. "Enough," Naruto's voice thundered, amplified by whatever power he channeled. Return to your sleep, fragment of void. He slammed his palm against the ground. The earth responded, rippling outward from the impact point. Stone flowed like water, rising to engulf the serpentine entity. The darkness fought, straining against its new prison, but Naruto wasn't finished. His outstretched hands poured chains of golden light that wrapped around both stone and shadow, binding them together. Seal. The chains tightened, compressing the struggling entity until it imploded with a final shriek of rage. Silence fell, broken only by the settling of displaced earth and the harsh rasp of Naruto's breathing. The golden fox aura faded, withdrawing into his body like water into parched ground. His eyes returned to blue, though the whisker marks remained prominently dark against suddenly pale skin. Ghislaine stood frozen, sword forgotten in her hand. What she had transcended her experience of combat, of magic, of reality itself. This was no ordinary man, no mere mage or warrior. This was something else entirely. Naruto staggered, one knee touching the ground as exhaustion claimed its due. Instinct overcame awe, and Ghislaine found herself sliding down the crater wall to his side. "Are you injured?" she asked, scanning for wounds. He shook his head, breathing still labored. "Just drained. It's been a while since I had to draw so deeply." "What was that thing? And what did you become?" Naruto managed a weak smile. "Too many questions, for one sitting." He glanced at the newly formed stone seal, its surface covered in glowing symbols. "This won't hold forever, especially not with someone actively trying to break the seals. Someone's releasing these fragments deliberately." "Yes." His expression hardened. "Someone who should know better." Ghislaine frowned. "The church agents mentioned a temple. A diversion." Naruto attempted to stand, wobbling slightly. Ghislaine caught his arm, surprised by the solidity of muscle beneath his simple clothing. "The real target is elsewhere. Has always been elsewhere. The sword," Ghislaine said with certainty. "The sword queen of Millis." Naruto studied her, weariness temporarily overshadowed by calculation. "Why do you seek it?" "Truth." Now, the intensity of his gaze the lying seemed not just difficult but foolish. "Power," she admitted. "The sword is said to cut anything, even the barriers between worlds. With such a weapon, I could protect my people from any threat." "Noble," he acknowledged, "but misguided." "How so?" "The sword doesn't grant power. It reveals what's already there." Naruto straightened, gently extracting his arm from her support. "And it exacts a price few are willing to pay." Before she could demand elaboration, movement at the crater's edge caught their attention. A figure stood silhouetted against the night sky, female, slender, with long hair that seemed to float on the mountain breeze. "Elinalize," Naruto said, recognition and wariness mingling in his voice. "I thought you'd still be with your clan." The woman descended into the crater with inhuman grace. As she approached, Ghislaine noted her unusual appearance, silvery hair that caught moonlight like polished metal, and more strikingly, patches of what appeared to be scales scattered across her visible skin. Not a beastwoman's fur, but something harder, reflective. "Dragon Sage." Elinalize inclined her head in formal greeting, her accent unlike any Ghislaine had heard, musical yet ancient. Each word precisely formed. "The awakening calls us all from our hiding places, it seems." Naruto's posture shifted subtly, not quite defensive, but cautious. "How many seals have broken?" "3 that we've confirmed, 2 more showing signs of weakening." Elinalize's gaze shifted to Ghislaine, curious but not hostile. "You keep interesting company these days." "Ghislaine Dedoldia." The beast woman introduced herself, unwilling to be discussed as if absent. "And you are?" Elinalize Dragonroad, last archivist of the Silvercrest clan. She offered a slight bow. "And descendant of those who once served the Dragon Sage." Naruto made a sound somewhere between amusement and exasperation. "I've told your people for generations, I'm not to be served. Only assisted when necessary." "Semantics." Elinalize dismissed with a wave. "The point remains that your presence here confirms our worst fears. The void fragments stir, and the sword must be reclaimed." "The sword stays hidden," Naruto countered firmly. "The sword cannot remain hidden if its counterpart awakens fully." Elinalize's calm facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine alarm. "You know this, Sage. The balance must be maintained." Ghislaine looked between them, pieces falling into place. You're really him, aren't you? She asked Naruto, the dragon sage from the legends. The one who forged the Sword Queen centuries ago. Naruto sighed, suddenly looking every year of his apparent immortality. Legends exaggerate. Not these ones, Millis said. If anything, they diminish what truly happened. A distant rumble drew their attention. The sealed fragment trembled slightly, the symbols on its surface flickering. We shouldn't linger here, Naruto said. This seal needs time to stabilize. Millis nodded. My camp lies 3 valleys east. We'll be safe there to discuss our next steps. There is no "or" in this situation, Naruto objected. I'll handle the fragments and whoever's releasing them. As you handled this one. Millis raised one elegant eyebrow. Forgive my observation, sage, but you seem diminished since last we met. A flash of irritation crossed Naruto's features. 5 centuries is a long time even for me, archivist. Things change. Not the fundamental laws that govern our world. Her voice softened with genuine concern. You need allies, whether you wish to admit it or not. Ghislaine cleared her throat. If the Sword Queen is truly in danger of falling into the wrong hands, I offer my blade to its protection. Both turned to her with matching expressions of surprise, as if they'd momentarily forgotten her presence. Naruto recovered first, his blue eyes narrowing. Why would you help protect something you came to claim for yourself? Because I'm not a fool. Ghislaine replied bluntly. What I witnessed here was beyond my understanding, but not my comprehension. If forces are moving that can threaten even you, the maker of legends, then my original quest seems suddenly petty. A ghost of a smile touched Naruto's lips. Wisdom from a warrior, rarer than you might think, even across centuries. Another tremor shook the ground, stronger than before. Cracks appeared in the newly formed seal, purple light seeping through like blood from a wound. We should go, Millis urged. Now, Naruto nodded reluctantly. My techniques aren't what they once were. I'll need time to prepare a more permanent solution. He glanced at Ghislaine. Are you certain about this? The path ahead leads away from your original goal, not toward it. Ghislaine sheathed her sword with deliberate finality. My goal was the sword. If protecting it serves the greater good, then my path hasn't changed, only my understanding of it. Something like approval flickered in Naruto's eyes. He extended his hands, one to Millis, one to Ghislaine. Then hold tight. This might feel unusual. The world blurred again as Naruto's transportation technique activated. This time, prepared for the sensation, Ghislaine managed to maintain her dignity despite the disorientation. They materialized at the edge of a small clearing where a simple camp had been established. A fire burned without smoke, its flames an unnatural blue that gave off heat without consuming its fuel. Around it sat 3 individuals who rose in alarm at their sudden appearance. Peace, Millis called out. The sage returns with us. The trio relaxed marginally, though their gazes remained fixed on Naruto with undisguised awe. Like Millis, they bore scattered patterns of scales across visible skin, one with copper tones, another silver blue, the third a deep emerald. The Dragon Road clan survives, I see, Naruto observed, swaying slightly before regaining his balance. Though fewer than I might have hoped. We endure, said the copper-scaled man. As you taught us. Millis guided Naruto to a seat by the fire, her movements respectful without being subservient. Rest, sage. Regain your strength while we prepare food and drink. Naruto didn't argue, sinking onto the offered cushion with poorly concealed relief. Ghislaine remained standing, uncertain of her place in this unexpected gathering. You as well, Sword Master, Millis said, gesturing to another cushion. Any ally of the sage is welcome among us. I wouldn't call us allies just yet, Ghislaine clarified. Though she accepted the seat. More like individuals with temporarily aligned interests. Naruto chuckled, the sound surprisingly youthful despite the ancient power she'd witnessed. Honesty, another rare quality. He accepted a steaming cup from the green-scaled woman, inhaling its aroma before sipping carefully. Though alignment of interests is how most lasting alliances begin. As the clan members busied themselves with preparations, Ghislaine studied Naruto more carefully. In the blue firelight, his features seemed to shift subtly, sometimes appearing barely older than 20. Other times bearing the weight of centuries. The whisker marks on his cheeks had faded somewhat, though they remained visible against his tanned skin. "You have questions," he said without looking at her. "Many, I imagine. More than could be answered in one night," Ghislaine admitted. "Try 3, he suggested. "The most important ones." Ghislaine considered carefully. "The sword. What is it truly?" "A key," Naruto replied after a thoughtful pause. "A weapon, yes, but more importantly, a key to something I helped seal away long ago. Its counterpart, what we faced tonight, is another key. But to a different lock. One should remain closed, the other opened only in dire necessity. And someone is attempting to collect these keys." "Yes. For what purpose?" Naruto's expression darkened. "That would be your 4th question." Ghislaine accepted the rebuke with a nod. "Then my 2nd. What are you?" The legends speak of the dragon sage, but clearly omit significant details. The firelight seemed to intensify as Naruto contemplated his answer. "I am a visitor. Someone who came from elsewhere long ago and found himself unable to return. In my original world, I was called a Jinchuriki, a human vessel containing a powerful spirit. Here, that connection manifested differently, allowing me to learn from the ancient dragons before they departed." "Departed where?" "Another dimension. Another reality." He gestured vaguely upward. "They found this world too constraining as humans and their magic spread. Only a few chose to remain, taking forms that could coexist with the changing world." Elinalise approached, offering Ghislaine a plate of unfamiliar food, roasted meat with herbs and what appeared to be glowing berries. "Those who stayed bred with humans occasionally," she explained. "My clan descends from such unions. Diluted now, but still carrying dragon essence in our blood." Ghislaine accepted the plate with murmured thanks. "And the 3rd question?" Naruto met her gaze directly. "Choose wisely." She already knew what she needed to ask. "Why me? Why allow me to witness all this, to join your quest? I'm nothing special in your world. Of ancient powers and dragon descendants." A genuine smile spread across Naruto's face, the first she'd seen that reached his eyes. "Nothing special." Ghislaine Dedoldia, North God Sword Style Master. At an age when most are still perfecting basic forms. Bearer of a spirit strong enough to resist the fragment's mental influence without training or preparation. Wise enough to recognize when to set aside personal ambition for greater purpose. He shook his head. "If that's nothing special, I've dramatically misunderstood this world for centuries." Heat rose unexpectedly to Ghislaine's cheeks. A's from acknowledged masters was rare in her experience, from a literal legend, unprecedented. She busied herself with her meal to hide her discomfort. "The sword called to you," Naruto continued more seriously, "as it has called to others across time. Some seeking power, some glory, some knowledge. The worthy ones, the rare ones, are those who recognize that finding the sword is never the end of the journey, but the beginning." "And where does this beginning lead?" Ghislaine asked. "That," Naruto said, "would be question number 4. The meal continued in companionable silence after that. The Dragon Road clan members maintained respectful distance, though their curious glances toward Ghislaine suggested they had questions of their own. Eventually, Elinalise rejoined them, settling gracefully beside the fire. "The fragment's sealing was temporary," she stated without preamble. "We need a more permanent solution." Naruto nodded. "For that, we need the sword." "So you'll retrieve it?" Hope-colored Elinalise's voice. "No, I'll reforge it." Shocked silence met this pronouncement. Even the fire seemed to still, its blue flames freezing momentarily before resuming their dance. "Reforge," Elinalise whispered. "But the original materials still exist," Naruto assured her. "Though scattered and hidden. The sword was never a single object, Elinalise. That's the secret the church never understood. Despite building their religion around it. Like the fragments of its counterpart," Ghislaine realized aloud. Naruto's approving glance sent another unexpected wave of warmth through her. "Exactly. 7 fragments of creation, 7 of destruction. Balance, always balance. The church believes they possess the true sword," Elinalise said. "They possess a symbol." Naruto's voice held ancient amusement. "A well-crafted replica I created to satisfy their need for a physical icon. The true components have been hidden separately for centuries, safer that way." Ghislaine frowned. "If these fragments are so dangerous, why not destroy them completely?" "Because they cannot be destroyed," Elinalize answered before Naruto could. They are fundamental aspects of our world's creation. To destroy them would unravel reality itself. Which is precisely what our opponent seeks, Naruto added grimly. You know who it is, Ghislaine said. Not a question. Naruto's eyes reflected the blue flames, giving them an otherworldly quality. I have suspicions. Old friends sometimes make the most determined enemies. The Ashen Emperor, Elinalize breathed, her scales seeming to ripple with agitation. Perhaps. Naruto set aside his empty cup. We'll know soon enough. Whoever seeks the fragments will continue their efforts, especially now that they know I've awakened to counter them. Ghislaine processed this information, fitting it against the legends she'd grown up hearing. The Ashen Emperor, a shadowy figure from ancient history, said to have challenged the gods themselves before being sealed away by the dragon sage. Most considered it allegorical rather than historical. If we're to reforge the sword, she said carefully, where do we begin? Naruto's expression softened at her use of we. With knowledge, then material. He glanced at Elinalize. Your archives still contain the original forging accounts. She nodded. Protected by blood seals, as you instructed. None have accessed them since the last gathering. Good. We'll start there. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, fatigue evident in the lines of his face. Tomorrow. Tonight. We rest and recover. As if by unspoken agreement. The gathering began to disperse. The clan members retreated to their tents, while Elinalize remained to extinguish the strange blue fire with a gesture. There's space in my tent, she offered to Ghislaine. Unless you prefer solitude. Ghislaine hesitated, glancing at Naruto. And the sage. A smile touched Elinalize's lips. He prefers the open sky. Always has. Naruto confirmed this with a nod. Old habits. The stars help me think. Accepting Elinalize's offer, Ghislaine followed her to a modest tent at the clearing's edge. Inside, cushions and furs created a surprisingly comfortable space, illuminated by a small crystal that emitted gentle white light. You have questions still, Elinalize observed as they settled. Beyond the three you asked him. Countless, Ghislaine admitted. Your clan serves him. Assists, Elinalize corrected with a smile. Assists him, then. For how long? Since he saved the first of our line from certain death over 7 centuries ago. Elinalize's expression grew distant, remembering stories rather than personal experience. When dragons still walked openly in this world, one formed a bond with a human woman. Their child, neither fully human nor fully dragon, was hunted by both races. The sage intervened, teaching the child to control their dual nature. And that child became the founder of your clan. Yes, we've served. Assisted him ever since, preserving knowledge others would destroy and maintaining watch over the seals during his absences. Ghislaine raised an eyebrow. He disappears often. Cycles, Elinalize explained. Periods of activity followed by long hibernation. This awakening came earlier than expected, likely forced by the breaking seals. Outside, they could hear Naruto moving about the clearing. His footsteps nearly silent despite his size. Occasionally, murmured words drifted through the night air, one-sided conversation that suggested he communicated with something or someone unseen. The entity within him, Ghislaine ventured. The source of the fox aura. Is it dangerous? Elinalize considered the question seriously. All power is dangerous in the wrong circumstances. But Kurama, the fox spirit, has been bound to Naruto for millennia, across worlds. They are partners now, not captor and captive as they once were. And the sword, is it truly as powerful as legends claim? More so, in the right hands. Elinalize's scales caught the crystal light, shifting iridescently. Though its greatest power isn't what most seek. It doesn't just cut anything, it cuts through deception. Through illusion, through the very fabric that separates realities. Ghislaine processed this, measuring it against her original motivations. And the price the sage mentioned. Truth, Elinalize said simply. The sword demands absolute truth from its wielder, about themselves, their intentions, their very nature. Few can face such revelation without breaking. That explained why Naruto had called her quest misguided. Ghislaine had sought power without understanding its nature or cost. The realization was humbling. Rest now, Elinalize suggested gently. Tomorrow's journey begins early, and the path ahead demands strength. As Ghislaine settled onto the furs, questions still swirled through her mind. Outside, Naruto's voice had fallen silent, though she sensed he remained awake. Vigilant beneath the stars, the dragon sage, a figure of legend now made flesh and blood, yet somehow more mysterious for the revelation. Her last conscious thought before sleep, P claimed her was simple certainty. Her life's path had irrevocably changed. Whatever lay ahead would test not just her sword arm, but her very understanding of the world and her place within it. Miles away, across valleys and mountains, another figure stood contemplating the night sky. Tall and elegant, wrapped in shadows that seemed to cling unnaturally close. Eyes the color of burnished gold surveyed the distant horizon where energy had flared hours earlier. "So you've finally awakened, old friend," the figure murmured, voice like silk sliding over steel. "Right on schedule." A servant approached, head bowed deferentially. "The third fragment has been sealed again, Your Imperial Majesty. Our agents report the Dragon Sage's involvement." Of course. The Ashen Emperor's lips curved in something approximating a smile. He always was predictable in his righteousness. "And the sword? No sign yet, Your Majesty. But we've identified a promising lead, a beast woman warrior who was seen with the sage." "Interesting." The Emperor turned from the window, shadows swirling like living cloaks. "Have our forces in the Beast Nation mobilize." Quietly. "I want information, not confrontation." "Not yet. And the church agents? Let them continue their wild goose chase. Their ignorance serves our purposes." The Emperor's golden eyes gleamed with ancient amusement. "The game begins in earnest now. With all the pieces finally in play. Even the Dragonroad clan, especially them." Shadows coalesced, momentarily obscuring the Emperor's features. "They guard secrets they don't fully understand. Archives filled with half-truths and misdirection. Naruto always did excel at hiding things in plain sight." The servant bowed lower. "Shall I inform Lady Miyuki to proceed with her assignment?" "Yes." The Emperor's voice softened with something almost like affection. "Tell her the time has come to meet our old friend. She knows what to do." As the servant departed, the Ashen Emperor returned to contemplation of the distant mountains. Centuries of planning, of patience, of careful manipulation, all culminating in this moment. The fragments awakening, the seals weakening, the sword soon to be reforged. All according to plan, the Emperor whispered to the empty chamber. "After all this time, old friend, we'll finally finish what we started. Whether you're ready or not." Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Echoes of the Past. Dawn painted the eastern sky in watercolor strokes, crimson bleeding into amber, violet retreating before the sun's advance. Elenialize emerged from her tent to find Naruto already awake, seated cross-legged at the clearing's edge where forest met sky. His eyes remained closed, hands resting palm up on his knees, breathing so measured it barely disturbed the morning air. She knew better than to interrupt. Meditation sustained him between cycles of activity, replenishing what centuries had slowly drained. Instead, she busied herself with morning preparations, movements deliberate and quiet. The beast woman, Ghislaine, joined her moments later, moving with predatory grace despite the early hour. No words passed between them as they kindled a new fire, this nay natural orange rather than yesterday's ethereal blue. "He hasn't moved since midnight," Elenialize finally offered, voice barely above a whisper. Ghislaine studied the distant figure. "Does he need to eat?" "Rarely, though he enjoys it when he does." A small smile touched Elenialize's lips. "Particularly noodles, for reasons he's never fully explained." This small detail, mundane, almost human, contrasted sharply with the power Ghislaine had witnessed the previous night. Before she could inquire further, Naruto's eyes opened, immediately alert without transition from repose to awareness. He approached their fire with measured steps, the whisker marks on his cheeks having faded overnight to barely visible lines. "The fragment's seal is holding for now," he announced without preamble. "But we need to move quickly. I sensed disturbances near 2 other containment sites." "Which ones?" Elenialize asked, handing him a steaming cup. "Northwest, beyond the Dedoldia mountain range, and east toward the great forest." He accepted the drink, inhaling its aroma before sipping. "The pattern suggests our opponent is working methodically, targeting the weakest seals first." Ghislaine frowned. "If they're releasing these fragments deliberately, they must have a specific goal. Knowledge from your archives might help us understand what we're facing." "Precisely." Naruto turned to Elenialize. How quickly can your people be ready to travel? We anticipated your request, sage. She gestured to where her clansmen were already dismantling tents and packing supplies. We travel light and fast. Satisfaction flickered across Naruto's features. Good. Our destination lies 3 days northeast, the Temple of Cascading Truth. The name meant nothing to Ghislaine, but Elenialize stiffened. That site was abandoned centuries ago. The last reports claimed it had collapsed entirely. A necessary deception. Naruto's expression revealed nothing. The temple's outer structure fell, but its heart remains intact. Protected by barriers few can perceive, let alone penetrate. And the archives, sealed within the deepest chamber. He finished his drink, returning the cup to Elenialize. Untouched since I last accessed them. Ghislaine interjected, if these archives are so valuable, why leave them unguarded? Who says they're unguarded? Naruto's eyes glinted with something ancient and fox-like. Some sentinels don't require food or rest. Before further questions could be raised, the camp dissolved into efficient motion. Within an hour, all traces of their presence had been erased. Supplies distributed among the 5 travelers. Naruto led their small party into the forest, setting a pace that was demanding without being punishing. They traversed the foothills in silence, saving breath for the journey rather than conversation. By midday, they'd covered ground that would have taken less experienced travelers twice as long. Only then did Naruto permit a brief rest. Chew. Sing a sheltered hollow beside a tumbling stream. Eat quickly, he advised. We need to clear the Fairspine Ridge before nightfall. Elenialize's clansmen, introduced his Corvin, Seraphine, and Javin, arranged themselves in a protective formation that spoke of long practice. As they ate dried fruit and smoked meat, Ghislaine found herself studying their scale patterns with undisguised curiosity. You may ask, Seraphine said suddenly. Her silver-blue scales catching sunlight. We're accustomed to questions. Ghislaine hesitated, then surrendered to curiosity. Do your scales serve a purpose beyond marking your heritage? Protection, Corvin answered, the copper-scaled man demonstrating by dragging a knife across his forearm where scales gleamed. The blade skidded harmlessly across the surface. And connection to our ancestors' magic. Each pattern is unique, Javin added, the youngest of the group judging by his manner. His emerald scales formed intricate whorls down his neck and arms. Mine grant affinity with plant life. Corvin's with earth, Seraphine's with water, and Elenialize, Ghislaine asked, glancing toward where their leader conferred quietly with Naruto. Elenialize bears the rarest pattern. Seraphine explained, voice dropping everentially. Moon silver, granting communion with spirits and memories. Only one dragon road in each generation carries such markings. This explained the woman's evident authority despite her apparent youth. And your loyalty to the sage, is that inherited as well? Our service is chosen, not compelled, Javin replied with surprising firmness. Each generation decides anew whether to maintain our ancient covenant. And all choose to continue it. Without exception. Corvin's expression softened. Would you abandon a GHT house that has guided your family safely through centuries of storms? Ghislaine considered this perspective. Among her people, tradition and obligation carried weight, but individual choice was paramount. The idea of generational service to a single figure struck her as both admirable and constraining. He doesn't demand our loyalty, Seraphine added, correctly reading Ghislaine's hesitation. Many times throughout our history, he's encouraged our clan to live normal lives, to integrate with the wider world. Yet you remain apart. By choice, Javin emphasized. The knowledge we preserve must be protected. Too many would misuse it. Further conversation ceased as Naruto rejoined them, signaling the end of their rest. They continued northeast, the terrain gradually shifting from dense forest to rocky hillsides. Fairspine Ridge loomed ahead, a jagged line of stone teeth against the afternoon sky. Naruto, Ghislaine called, matching his pace. Yesterday you mentioned a technique, Flying Thunder God. You've used no conventional magic that I can detect. What exactly is your power? He didn't immediately answer, navigating a particularly steep incline before responding. In my original world, we called it chakra, a blend of physical and spiritual energy unique to each individual. Here, it manifests differently, interacting with this world's natural mana in ways I'm still discovering even after centuries. And the fox entity within you. Kurama. Affection colored the name. A being of pure chakra. What my people called a tailed beast. Once my unwilling prisoner, now my oldest friend. He's conscious. Aware. Very. Though he pretends to sleep most of the time these days. Naruto tapped his chest. Says modern problems are too complicated compared to the simple days of destroying mountains and raising tsunamis. Ghislaine couldn't tell if he was joking. And dragons, how do they factor into your abilities? They recognized something familiar in my nature when I arrived here. Naruto vaulted over a fallen tree, landing without sound. Before they departed this realm, several taught me their ways, how to commune with natural energy, how to shape matter beyond its normal constraints. In return, I helped protect their descendants as humans expanded their territories. The Dragon Road clan, among others. Most bloodlines have thinned over time, gone traits becoming recessive or disappearing entirely. His gaze drifted to where Elinalize led her clansmen up the ridge. They're among the last to maintain strong draconic heritage. They reached Fairspine's summit as sunset gilded the western horizon. Below stretched a vast landscape of valleys and lesser peaks, mist already gathering in the lowlands. Naruto selected their campsite with care. Full deliberation, a sheltered hollow protected on 3 sides by towering stone. No fire tonight, he instructed as they settled. We're being watched. The statement sent immediate tension through the group. Ghislaine's hand moved to her sword hilt, eyes scanning the deepening shadows. Not immediately dangerous, Naruto clarified. But curious. The church isn't alone in sensing changes. Asura's agents, Elinalize suggested, perhaps, or independent interests. He seated himself at the hollow's entrance, positioning to observe both camp and surrounding terrain. Sleep in shifts. We leave before dawn. Despite her trained alertness, Ghislaine found herself drifting into slumber during her allocated rest period, lulled by the rhythmic breathing of her companions. Dreams came swiftly. Unusual for her typically dreamless sleep. She stood in a vast chamber of polished stone, pillars rising like ancient trees to support a ceiling lost in darkness. At the chamber's center burned a foe. RGE unlike any she'd seen, flames neither red nor orange nor yellow, but pure white, dancing without smoke or heat. A figure worked the forge, back turned to her. Golden hair gleamed in the white light, broad shoulders bent to the task. Metal sang against metal as hammer struck anvil, each impact sending sparks spiraling upward like captive stars. It requires balance, the figure said without turning. Naruto's voice, yet different, younger, less weathered by time. Perfect balance between opposing forces. The metal before him pulsed with inner light, neither fully solid nor liquid. As Ghislaine approached, she saw not a sword taking shape, but a series of interlocking components, gears, plates, crystalline structures that seemed to breathe. Not a weapon, she heard herself say. A key. Both. Naruto corrected, finally turning. His eyes blazed the same white as the forge flames. Always both. Creation and destruction. Life and death. Beginning and end. The unfinished creation between them shuddered. Components separating, rising into the air. 7 distinct pieces, each radiating different colored light. 7 fragments, Naruto continued. 7 guardians, 7 seals, and when combined, his expression darkened. Everything changes. The white flames surged suddenly, engulfing the floating fragments, consuming Naruto. Ghislaine tried to move, to help, but found herself frozen in place as fire raced toward her. She woke with a sharp intake of breath, hand automatically reaching for her sword. Pre-dawn light filtered weakly through mist that had crept up the ridge overnight, shrouding their camp in ghostly white. Naruto still sat at the hollow's entrance, seemingly unchanged from when she'd fallen asleep. You saw the forge, he said quietly, not turning. Not a question. Ghislaine approached, muscles stiff from sleeping on stone. How did you know? The sword sometimes shows itself to those connected to its fate. He finally glanced at her, eyes ormal blue rather than the unsettling white of her dream. It's been doing that since its creation, reaching across time and space to those who might eventually wield it. I'm not the first to dream of it. Far from it. Something like sorrow crossed his features. Though few interpret the vision correctly, most see only what they wish to see: ultimate power, divine authority, cosmic secrets. What should they see? Responsibility. Naruto stood, stretching muscles that didn't seem to require it. The burden of knowledge that can't be unlearned. Before Ghislaine could press further, Elise emerged from her rest spot. Immediately alert, the others followed moments later, camp dissolving into efficient motion without need for discussion. They descended Fairspine's eastern face as mist burned away beneath strengthening sunlight. The landscape below gradually revealed itself, a sprawling valley floor dotted with stone formations that seemed deliberately placed despite their weathered condition. The temple's outer grounds, Naruto explained as they navigated the ancient site. Once a city housed 10,000 souls, scholars, artisans, and guardians who tended the knowledge within. Ghislaine studied the ruins with renewed interest. What had appeared natural from a distance now revealed subtle evidence of design, fallen columns camouflaged as natural stone, pavements disguised as random slate. Fountains that had become pools choked with vegetation. What happened to them? She asked. Time, Elise answered, and the first convergence war. When dimensional barriers thinned, creatures crossed over that shouldn't have existed in this reality. The fragments were separated during that conflict, Naruto added. Both sword and void components. Too dangerous to remain united with the barriers weakened. Quote, they traversed the ruined city for hours, path winding seemingly at random. Yet Ghislaine noted that Naruto never hesitated at intersections, never backtracked or corrected course. He moved with absolute certainty through a labyrinth that would have confounded even experienced explorers. Midday found them before what appeared to be a sheer cliff face, unremarkable save for its imposing height. Naruto approached it directly, placing both palms against rough stone. Still intact, he murmured with evident relief. The illusion holds. Illusion. Ghislaine examined the rock face more carefully, seeing nothing but weathered granite. Rather than explaining, Naruto closed his eyes in concentration. The whisker marks on his cheeks darkened gradually, energy gathering around his hands where they touched stone. Reveal, he commanded, voice resonating with unexpected depth. Reality shimmered, stone rippling like disturbed water. The cliff face dissolved, revealing an immense doorway carved directly into the mountain, 30 feet tall, half as wide, its surface covered in intricate symbols that spiraled inward toward a central panel. The Temple of Cascading Truth, Naruto announced. Hidden in plain sight for 7 centuries. Elise stepped forward reverently, her clansmen following with expressions of awe. Clearly none had visited this place before, despite their clan's connection to its guardian. How do we enter? Javan asked, studying the symbol door. Carefully, Naruto placed his hand on the central panel, which illuminated at his touch. The temple recognizes me, but its guardians will need convincing regarding the rest of you. Guardians? Ghislaine questioned. You mentioned sentinels earlier. Constructs, Elise explained softly. Dragon-made and sage-enhanced. Neither living nor dead, but vigilant across centuries. Before further discussion could occur, the massive door began to slide open, not outward or inward, but retracting into the surrounding stone like liquid absorbed by thirsty earth. Beyond lay darkness, absolute and impenetrable. Stay close, Naruto instructed, producing a small object from within his clothing. With a twist of his fingers, it illuminated, not a flame or crystal, but a sphere of condensed golden energy that cast warm light several yards in all directions. They entered single file, Naruto leading, Elise following, with Ghislaine positioned between Corvin and Seraphine while Javan guarded their rear. The entrance sealed behind them with disturbing finality, stone flowing like molten wax before solidifying once more. No going back now, Ghislaine murmured, suppressing instinctive unease at being enclosed in stone. There's always a way out, Naruto replied, his hearing evidently sharper than she'd estimated. Though rarely the same way you entered. The passage descended at a gentle angle, walls lined with the same spiraling symbols as the door. As they progressed deeper, the quality of darkness changed, less an absence of light than a presence of something that absorbed illumination. Naruto's glowing sphere pushed against it like a boat against current. What are these markings? Ghislaine asked, trailing fingers over symbols that seemed to shift when directly observed. Dragon script, Elise answered. The oldest written language in our world. It records not just information but intent, the emotional and spiritual context behind the inscribed knowledge. What does this section say? Names, Corvin interjected, his copper scales gleaming in the golden light. Thousands of names. Those who lived and died in service to this place. The passage eventually opened into a vast circular chamber supported by columns carved to resemble stylized trees. There, branches, spreading across the ceiling in intricate stone lacework. Unlike the entrance tunnel, this space held its own illumination, soft blue light emanating from crystalline formations embedded in the walls. "The greeting hall," Naruto said, extinguishing his light sphere with a casual gesture. First of 7 chambers, each deeper than the last. They had barely taken 3 steps into the hall when movement flickered at its periphery, shadow separating from shadow, taking solid form. A figure materialized before them, humanoid but clearly not human. Its body paired constructed from overlapping plates of some dark material, joints articulated with precision, face a smooth mask with glowing indentations where eyes should be. "Construct," Elinalize whispered unnecessarily. The guardian regarded them silently, head tilting slightly as it seemingly assessed each visitor in turn. When its gaze fell on Naruto, it straightened perceptibly. "Sage creator," it greeted. Voice neither male nor female, resonating with metallic undertones. 827 years since last arrival. Temple systems functional. Archives secure. "Thank you, Sentinel," Naruto replied formally. "I seek access to the forging records." The construct's gaze shifted to Naruto's companions. Unauthorized entities detected. Security protocols require verification or elimination. Ghislaine tensed, hand moving toward her sword despite uncertainty whether conventional weapons would affect such a being. "They accompany me under my authority," Naruto stated firmly. Quote, "Verification code. Uzumaki 7 Kurama Dawn." The Sentinel processed this information, its eye lights flickering momentarily. Primary authorization accepted. Secondary verification required from accompanying entities. Blood recognition, Elinalize surmised, stepping forward confidently. She extended her arm, palm upward. "Dragon Road clan offers heritage verification." The Sentinel approached, extending a finger that tapered to a needle-fine point. With precise motion, it pricked Elinalize's offered palm, collecting a single drop of blood. The liquid gleamed silver rather than red as it was absorbed into the construct's appendage. Dragon Road lineage confirmed. Moon silver variant recognized. The Sentinel stepped back. Access granted to Archives Level 3. One by one, the remaining Dragon Road clan members underwent the same verification, each granted varying levels of access based on their specific heritage patterns. Finally, only Ghislaine remained unverified. "No recognized lineage detected," the Sentinel announced as it analyzed her blood. "No previous access record. No authorized credentials. She enters under my direct protection," Naruto intervened. "Champion status." The term clearly held specific meaning within the temple's protocols. The Sentinel straightened once more, reassessing Ghislaine with its glowing gaze. "Champion designation requires trial," it stated. "Does the entity consent to evaluation?" All eyes turned to Ghislaine, who met the Sentinel's gaze steadily. "What does this trial entail?" "Combat assessment. Spiritual resonance measurement. Intent verification." The construct gestured toward the chamber's center where the floor began to reconfigure, stone flowing like liquid to create a circular platform 20 feet in diameter. "Failure results in memory modification and expulsion. Not death," Ghislaine asked with raised eyebrow. "Unnecessary," the Sentinel replied simply. She considered briefly, weighing unknown risk against her growing commitment to this strange quest. "I consent." "Ghislaine," Naruto cautioned, "the trial is designed for those with spiritual training. It tests more than physical ability. Then I'll learn quickly." She unstrapped her sheathed sword from her back, handing it to Elinalize. "Or fail memorably." Without waiting for further discussion, she stepped onto the platform, which immediately illuminated with circular patterns radiating outward from her position. The Sentinel followed, its form shifting subtly, limbs elongating, joints reconfiguring for increased mobility. "Begin when ready," it instructed. Ghislaine settled into her combat stance, centering her weight and focus. Though unarmed by choice, better to gauge an unknown opponent without risking her blade, she remained confident in her hand-to-hand capabilities. The Sentinel made no aggressive move, standing motionless several yards away. Ghislaine maintained her position, waiting for indication of intent. Seconds stretched into a full minute of perfect stillness from both combatants. "Interesting approach," Naruto commented from beyond the platform's edge. Most rush in immediately. Understanding dawned. The trial had already begun. Ghislaine reassessed her strategy, recognizing this as more than physical combat. With deliberate motion, she relaxed her stance and straightened. I seek knowledge, not conquest, she stated clearly. I offer respect rather than challenge. The Sentinel's eye lights brightened fractionally. Intent noted. Phase 1 complete. Without warning, it launched forward with astonishing speed. Ghislaine barely evaded the first strike, ducking beneath an arm that whistled past where her head had been. The construct's second attack followed immediately, a sweeping leg Mushoku, and that nearly connected with her midsection. Pure instinct guided her response, body reacting with trained precision to threats her mind barely registered in time. The Sentinel's combat style defied categorization. Neither wholly human nor bestial, movements flowing with mechanical perfection while adapting to her evasions with disturbing intelligence. A glancing blow caught her shoulder, the impact surprising in its restraint. Testing, not damaging. Ghislaine adjusted accordingly, transitioning from pure defense to measured counterattacks. She landed 3 precise strikes in rapid succession, sternum, joint equivalent. Balance point, each connecting solidly without apparent effect. Physical assessment progressing, the Sentinel announced, its attacks increasing in complexity. Adapting to subject parameters, the platform beneath them began to shift, sections rising and falling unpredictably. Ghislaine maintained her balance through experience and natural agility, though each adjusts. Teamment cost precious reaction time against her opponent's relentless assault. Sweat beaded on her brow as the combat intensified, her breathing controlled but deepening with exertion. The Sentinel showed no signs of fatigue or limitation, its efficiency unwavering. Ghislaine recognized the inevitable conclusion: she couldn't outlast a construct that didn't tire. Innovation. Then, she feinted left, allowed a calculated strike to her side that positioned her precisely where she needed to be, then executed a maneuver from the most obscure North God techniques, a spiraling leap that carried her over the Sentinel while her clawed hand raked across its back. To her surprise, her claws left visible marks in the construct's surface. It paused, reaching back to touch the damage. Unexpected approach, it noted. Something almost like approval in its mechanical voice. Phase 2 complete. The platform stabilized abruptly, all sections returning to level position. The Sentinel's posture shifted, from combat readiness to neutral stance. Final assessment requires spiritual resonance, it announced. Please maintain position. Before Ghislaine could question the instruction, the platform bent. Her feet illuminated with intense blue light. Energy surged upward, engulfing her in a column of radiance that seemed to penetrate flesh and bone, examining something beyond physical form. Within the light, impressions flashed through her consciousness, memories, desires, fears, all exposed and examined by an intelligence that felt ancient and impartial. The sensation wasn't painful but profoundly uncomfortable, like being turned inside out while remaining conscious of every moment. Through this invasive examination, Ghislaine maintained her core identity, her determination, her sense of purpose. Her newly discovered commitment to protecting the sword rather than claiming it. These elements she offered freely to the light's inspection, holding nothing back. As abruptly as it began, the examination ended. The light receded, leaving Ghislaine swaying slightly from the experience. Across the platform, the Sentinel regarded her with its glowing gaze. Champion status verified, it announced. Access granted to Archives Level 5. Elinalize gasped audibly. Level 5. That's higher clearance than any Dragonroad has held in generations. The Sentinel gestured, and the platform reintegrated with the surrounding floor. Proceed to inner chambers when ready. This unit will guide. Ghislaine rejoined the group, accepting her sword from Elinalize with a nod of thanks. Her legs felt curiously unsteady, aftereffects of whatever energy had examined her so thoroughly. Well done, Naruto said quietly, approval evident in his voice. Few pass all 3 phases on first attempt. What exactly did it see? Ghislaine asked, unsettled by the experience. Everything. Your past, your motivations, your potential futures. His expression softened. Don't worry, the information remains within the temple systems. Even I can't access another's evaluation results. The Sentinel led them deeper into the temple, through a series of increasingly elaborate chambers. Each space feet, Distinct architectural elements. One with floors that appeared to be liquid yet supported weight, another where gravity seemed to shift direction between steps, a third where sound behaved according to unfamiliar laws. Dragon architecture, Elise explained when Ghislaine questioned these phenomena. They shaped reality differently than humans, embedding physical laws directly into construction rather than working around them. Quote, the fourth chamber presented their first significant obstacle, a vast chasm splitting the floor from wall to wall, its depths lost in shadow. No visible bridge spanned the gap, which extended at least 30 feet across. The Faith Crossing, Naruto identified. Test of trust and perception. I see no crossing, Corvin observed, peering cautiously over the edge. Because you're looking with ordinary sight. Naruto gestured toward his eyes. Dragon sight reveals what human perception cannot. Ghislaine frowned. And for those of us lacking dragon heritage. In answer, Naruto approached her, raising his hand toward her face. May I? At her nod, he gently touched her forehead. Energy tingled beneath his fingertips, warm and somehow familiar, owing into her skull and behind her eyes. The sensation lasted only moments before he withdrew his hand. Look again, he instructed. But don't focus on seeing. Feel the path instead. Ghislaine turned toward the chasm, following his cryptic direction. At first, nothing changed. The gap remained empty space. Then, gradually, as she relaxed her conventional perception, something shimmered into essence, not a bridge in any traditional sense, but a pattern of energies that created something like stepping stones floating unsupported across the void. I see it, she breathed. Or, feel it, rather. Naruto nodded. The crossing exists in a slightly adjacent reality. Your body can interact with it, but ordinary vision can't perceive it. He demonstrated by stepping confidently onto cement. Empty air, yet his foot landed solidly on something invisible to conventional sight. One by one, they followed his example, crossing the chasm via a bridge that existed in some quantum superposition between realities. Beyond the Faith Crossing lay two additional chambers of increasing complexity and wonder. In the sixth, constellations spiraled overhead that corresponded to no sky Ghislaine had ever observed. Stars arranged in patterns that seemed to convey information rather than random beauty. The celestial map of our original homeworld, Elise whispered, gazing upward with evident emotion. The dragon's birthplace, before they traveled between dimensions. Finally, they reached the seventh chamber, smaller than its predecessors but radiating importance through every element of its construction. At its center stood a cylindrical pedestal of some crystalline material, its surface covered in more of the spiraling dragon script. The archive core, Naruto announced. Reposito. Rai of knowledge spanning multiple worlds and millennia. The sentinel positioned itself beside the pedestal. Access authorization confirmed. Specify information parameters. Original forging records for the 7-fragment key. Naruto instructed. Full technical specifications and material requirements. The crystal pedestal illuminated from within, light pulsing in rhythmic patterns. Above it, air shimmered and condensed, forming three-dimensional images that rotated slowly, schematics for something infinitely complex despite its apparently simple sword-like appearance. Display component separation, Naruto continued. Individual fragment specifications. The image expanded, components separating to reveal 7 distinct pieces, each uniquely shaped yet clearly designed to interlock with its companions. Measurements and material compositions appeared beside each fragment, text displayed in the same spiral script that adorned the temple walls. Naruto studied the display with intense focus, occasionally requesting more detailed views of specific components. Elise and her clansmen observed with reverent attention, occasionally murmuring among themselves when particularly significant information appeared. Ghislaine, lacking context for much of what she witnessed, focused instead on understanding the sword's overall design. Despite its ceremonial appearance in the projected images, she recognized functional elements that spoke to its purpose as a weapon: balance points, edge geometries, grip ergonomics. Yet other aspects defied conventional understanding: internal NNELS that seemed designed to direct energy rather than strengthen structure, crystalline components with no obvious mechanical purpose. It's beautiful, she found herself saying. Even in schematic form. Beauty and function in perfect balance, Naruto agreed without looking away from the display. The dragons insisted on both. They believed nothing truly powerful could be ugly, and nothing merely decorative could be significant. Hours passed as they studied the archives, Naruto occasionally requesting additional information or clarification from the sentinel. Eventually, he stepped back from the pedestal, expression both satisfied and troubled. "I have what we need," he announced. "Coordinates for each fragment's containment location, material requirements for reforging, and activation sequences." "And the news is not good," Elinalise surmised, reading his expression. "The fragments are scattered more widely than I remembered. One lies beneath the Asura capital itself, Aneth, within the great forest where the beast tribes hold dominion. A third rests in an underwater temple off the Millis coast." He sighed heavily. "Recovering them without alerting our adversary will be nearly impossible." "Then we don't try for secrecy," Ghislaine suggested pragmatically. "We move quickly and directly instead." "There's wisdom in that approach," Naruto acknowledged. "Though it means confrontation becomes inevitable." 7 fragments, Corvin noted. 5 of us. The mathematics seems unfavorable. We won't remain 5 for long. Naruto gestured, and the display shifted to show a map of the continent. "We'll need specialists for certain recovery operations. Fortunately, I've maintained connections across centuries that may prove useful." "The Blacksmiths Guild in Sharia," Elinalise suggested. "They've preserved some of the metallurgical techniques you taught them." "And the Misty Veil researchers," Seraphine added. "Their crystallography work could help with the third fragment." Naruto nodded. "Both excellent suggestions. But first, we need to secure the fragment nearest to our current position." He indicated a location on the displayed map, deep within the mountains they currently occupied. "The adamant key lies in a vault less than a day's journey from here." "The crystal matrix component," Elinalise identified. "The one that anchors the others." "Precisely. Without it, the remaining fragments cannot be properly aligned." Naruto turned to the sentinel. "Archive access complete. Prepare security protocols for potential intrusion." "Acknowledged," the construct responded. "Defense systems activated. Additional sentinels mobilizing." As if summoned by the words, the chamber's shadows deepened, forms taking shape along the walls, more constructs emerging from dormancy. Their eye lights flickering to life one by one until at least 20 stood at attention around the perimeter. "The temple will protect itself," Naruto explained, noting Ghislaine's concerned expression. "These guardians have defended this knowledge through 3 attempted invasions over the centuries. They'll continue to do so in our absence." They departed the archive chamber, retracing their path through the temple's wonders. The crossing chamber presented the same challenge in reverse, though Ghislaine found the invisible bridge easier to perceive this time, her consciousness having expanded to accommodate this new form of perception. "The temporal gradient increases near the entrance," Naruto warned as they approached the final chambers. "Time flows different. Tly inside the temple compared to the outside world." "How differently?" Ghislaine asked, unpredictably. "Sometimes faster, sometimes slower." He gestured toward the blue-lit crystals that had guided their entry. "These regulate the flow somewhat, but prepare for disorientation when we exit." His warning proved prescient. When they finally emerged through the massive doorway into open air once more, Ghislaine stumbled slightly as her senses realigned. The sky overhead showed late afternoon sun, yet they'd spent what felt like many hours within the temple complex. "Only 3 hours have passed externally," Naruto confirmed, observing the sun's position. "We've gained valuable time." Elinalise scanned their surroundings with sudden alertness. "We're not alone." The warning came moments before movement flickered at the edge of the ruined city, figures darting between collapsed structures, attempting concealment but betrayed by urgency. Metallic glints suggested weapons catching sunlight. "Church agents," Corvin identified, his copper scales darkening as they always did when he sensed danger. "At least a dozen, approaching from multiple directions." "How did they find this place?" Seraphine wondered aloud, hands already moving in preparation for defensive magic. "They followed us," Ghislaine realized, recalling Naruto's earlier warning about being watched. "From the mountains." Naruto's expression revealed neither surprise nor concern. "They won't enter the temple. The sentinels would never permit it." He surveyed the approaching forces with practiced assessment. "But Hale certainly tried to prevent our departure." Millis Church formal operatives, Elenialize observed as their opponents drew closer, abandoning pretense of stealth. White Order insignia. They're inquisitors, not common soldiers. Indeed, the approaching group wore distinctive white and gold armor, lightweight but effective, augmented with magical enhancements visible as subtle glowing patterns. Their weapons ranged from conventional swords to more exotic implements designed specifically for combating magical threats. Halt in the name of the Holy See, called their apparent leader, a tall woman whose armor bore additional embellishments denoting senior rank. You stand on sacred ground claimed by the Church of Millis. This ground belongs to no church, Naruto replied calmly. It predates your religion by millennia. Blasphemy. The woman raised her weapon, a staff topped with a complex crystalline structure. You will surrender for questioning regarding your unauthorized access to holy sites. Naruto sighed with what seemed like genuine weariness. Every few generations, we repeat this conversation. He stepped forward, placing himself between the Inquisitors and his companions. I have no quarrel with Millis or its faith. Leave now, and we need not come into conflict. The Inquisitor's response was immediate and unequivocal. Her staff flared with blinding white light, channeling attack magic toward Naruto with impressive speed. The energy struck some invisible barrier a foot from his body, dissipating harmlessly into the air. So be it, he murmured. What follow? Ed demonstrated why legend spoke of the dragon sage with equal measures of awe and terror. Naruto moved with fluid grace that belied devastating effect. No wasted motion, no dramatic gestures, just perfect efficiency. The first 3 Inquisitors who engaged him found themselves incapacitated before they registered the counterattack, their enhanced armor offering no protection against techniques that bypassed physical defenses entirely. The remaining church forces split their attention between Naruto and his companions, clearly hoping to overwhelm through numerical advantage. 4 operatives converged on Ghislaine, identifying her as the non-magical combatant and presumably easier target. Their mistake. Ghislaine drew her sword in a single motion that continued seamlessly into her first strike, a North God technique that prioritized disabling rather than killing. Her blade found the gap between armor plates on the nearest attacker's shoulder, severing support straps without drawing blood. The woman's armor shifted awkwardly, throwing her off balance and into the path of her companion, creating momentary chaos Ghislaine exploited without hesitation. Nearby, the Dragon Road clan Dem demonstrated why dragon heritage commanded respect even in diluted form. Corvin's scales glowed copper bright as he manipulated the earth beneath the Inquisitors' feet, stone flowing like quicksand to trap boots and ankles. Seraphine worked in concert with him, her water manipulation converting trapped earth to mud that hardened instantly around struggling limbs. Javin proved surprisingly effective despite his youth, his control over plant life manifesting as accelerated growth of dormant seeds within the ruins. Vines erupted from seemingly barren ground, wrapping around weapons and armor joints with targeted precision. Elenialize engaged directly with the Inquisitor leader, their confrontation more evenly matched than the others. Silver scales gleaming with inner light, she countered the woe. Man's staff magic with techniques Ghislaine had never witnessed, spells that seemed to bend light and sound around their caster, creating multiple illusory duplicates that fought with identical capability. Throughout the skirmish, Ghislaine remained aware of Naruto's presence at the battle's center, a calm focal point amid chaos. He fought without apparent effort, movements minimal yet devastatingly effective. Most striking was his restraint. Where he could have killed with ease, he chose disablement instead, leaving his opponents unconscious or immobilized rather than injured. Enough. Naruto's voice cut through the combat noise. Carrying unexpected authority, he made a single sharp gesture, and a wave of golden energy expanded outward from his position, washing over friend and foe alike. Where it touched the church forces, it induced immediate unconsciousness. Where it contacted Ghislaine and the others, it felt like nothing more than a warm breeze carrying the scent of distant forests. Silence fell across the battlefield as abruptly as combat had erupted. Only Naruto's companions remained standing, surrounded by unconscious Inquisitors who would wake hours later with headaches and incomplete memories of their defeat. Impressive, observed a new voice from atop a nearby collapsed column. Though perhaps more dramatic than necessary. All eyes turned toward the speaker, a woman of striking appearance perched with perfect poise on the precarious stone. Raven hair framed a face of almost unsettling beauty, features arranged with mathematical precision that somehow avoided coldness. Her clothing spoke of northern territories, layered silks in blues and whites, embroidered with geometric patterns that subtly enhanced magical properties. Miyuki Shiba, Naruto identified. Neither surprised nor particularly pleased. Still serving Asura's interests, I see. The woman inclined her head slightly, acknowledgement rather than confirmation. Dragon Sage, you look well for someone the archives declared dormant for the past century. Reports of my hibernation were. He paused, lips quirking slightly. Somewhat exaggerated. Clearly, her gaze swept over the unconscious inquisitors. Then Naruto's companions, lingering longest on Ghislaine. Interesting associates for one who historically preferred solitude. Elinalize stepped forward protectively. State your purpose, diplomat. You're far from Asura's borders. Observation only, Miyuki replied with practiced pleasantness that revealed nothing. When ancient powers stir and forgotten temples reveal themselves, my kingdom takes notice. Your emperor takes notice, Naruto corrected, something dark flickering behind his eyes. How is the Ashen Throne these days? Still corrupting everything it touches. For the briefest moment, Miyuki's perfect composure wavered, a flash of something like regret crossing her features before diplomatic training reasserted itself. His Imperial Majesty extends greetings, she said carefully, and reminds you of obligations unfulfilled. His Imperial Majesty, Naruto replied, voice hardening, knows exactly why those obligations remain unfulfilled. The terms were broken on his side, not mine. Miyuki descended from her perch with inhuman grace, landing lightly despite the considerable height. Perhaps new terms could be negotiated. Times change. Necessities evolve. Some principles don't evolve. Naruto's posture shifted subtly. Nothing threatening, but preparation rather than relaxation. Tell your emperor that releasing the void fragments won't achieve what he hopes. It never could. Something flickered across Miyuki's perfect features, surprise quickly masked. I don't know what you're referring to. You're a better diplomat than that, Naruto chided gently. Don't waste lies on those who can see through them. Their standoff lasted several tense seconds, unspoken history stretching between them like invisible threads. Finally, Miyuki inclined her head again. This time with what appeared to be genuine respect. I'll convey your message, she said. Though I doubt it will deter current initiatives. It wasn't meant to deter, Naruto replied. Only to warn. With that cryptic exchange completed, Miyuki stepped backward, a circle of frost forming beneath her feet. Until we meet again, sage. Her gaze swept over the others, settling briefly on Ghislaine once more. Choose your companions wisely. Some journeys require specific qualities. Before anyone could respond, ice crystals swirled around her form, obscuring her silhouette. Before collapsing inward with a soft implosion. When the frost cleared, she had vanished completely. Teleportation? Ghislaine asked, impressed despite herself. Dimensional shifting, Naruto corrected. A specialty of northern mages. She's merely displaced herself a short distance rather than truly teleporting. Elinalize frowned. She'll report our presence and purpose. Of course. That was inevitable from the moment we entered the temple. Naruto turned toward the mountains rising beyond the ruins. Which means we have limited time to secure the first fragment before interference becomes more determined. The Inquisitors, Corvin asked, gesturing toward the unconscious church agents. Will wake confused but unharmed. Naruto was already moving, setting a brisk pace away from the temple grounds. Their superiors will interpret events according to preconceptions rather than reality. They traveled through the remainder of daylight, ascending into increasingly rugged terrain as shadows lengthened across valleys below. Naruto maintained relentless forward momentum, pausing only when terrain absolutely required it, speaking little save for occasional navigational instructions. As twilight settled, Ghislaine maneuvered to walk alongside him, matching his pace despite growing fatigue. You know the northern woman, she observed. Beyond mere recognition, Naruto's expression revealed nothing. Miyuki Shiba has served Asura's diplomatic corps for 15 years. Our paths have crossed occasionally. That's not what I meant. A barely perceptible sigh escaped him. No, it isn't. He vaulted a fallen tree, continuing without breaking stride. She was once a student of sorts. Before the current emperor solidified his influence. She seemed conflicted. With good reason. Something like sorrow flickered across Naruto's features. Miyuki possesses extraordinary magical talent shaped by complicated loyalties. The Emperor exploits both with remarkable effectiveness. You said the Ashen Emperor was releasing the fragments deliberately. She denied knowledge. Technically true. She likely doesn't know the full extent of his plans. Naruto navigated a particularly treacherous section of trail before continuing. The Emperor compartmentalizes information meticulously. Each agent knows only what they absolutely require. Ghislaine processed this, connecting fragments of information. You know him personally, don't you? This Emperor. Naruto's steps faltered momentarily, the first break in his perfect rhythm since they had begun their journey. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. I knew him when he was still human, he said quietly. Before ambition consumed everything worthwhile within him. The simple statement contained volumes of unspoken history. Ghislaine recognized emotional territory too complex to navigate with casual questions and respected his evident pain by changing subject. How far to the fragment's location? We'll reach the outer boundaries by midnight, Naruto replied, seemingly grateful for the shift in focus. The vault itself lies within a cave system beneath the northern peak. And its defenses, less concerned with intruders than containment. His expression grew serious. The adamant key fragment resonates with crystalline structures. In its raw form, it can trigger crystallization in organic matter, essentially turning living tissue to stone. Pleasant, Ghislaine remarked dryly. Indeed, which is why its retrieval requires specific precautions. He glanced back at their companions, who followed with determined expressions despite evident fatigue. Elinalize's dragon heritage offers some natural resistance. For the rest of you, I'll provide protective measures before we enter the vault proper. Night had fully claimed the mountains by the time they reached their destination, a narrow ravine cutting deep between towering peaks. No visible entrance marked the vault's location, though Naruto navigated with unwavering confidence toward a specific rock face that appeared indistinguishable from countless others. Rest here briefly, he instructed as they gathered in the ravine's shelter. The vault entrance requires specific preparations. While the others gratefully sank to the ground, setting aside equipment and stretching overtaxed muscles, Naruto approached the seemingly solid rock wall. He placed both palms against stone, closing his eyes in concentration. Gradually, the whisker marks on his cheeks darkened, energy gathering visibly around his hands. Unlike the temple's entrance, this unsealing proved more demanding. Sweat beaded on his brow as minutes passed without apparent effect. Something's wrong, Elinalize observed quietly, rising to her feet. The resonance pattern isn't responding correctly. Naruto stepped back, frowning. The seal has been tampered with. The statement sent immediate tension through their small group. Ghislaine rose smoothly, hand moving to her sword hilt by instinct. Recently, she asked. Very. Naruto placed his palm against the stone again, this time with different intent. Within the past 3 days. Amateur work, but effective enough to disrupt the original patterns. Someone's trying to access the fragment, Corvin concluded grimly. Or already has, Javin added, voice tight with concern. Naruto shook his head. The primary containment remains intact. I can sense the fragment's resonance beyond the barrier. His expression hardened with determination. But we can't use the conventional entrance now. The tampered seals are unstable. What does that mean for us? Ghislaine asked practically. It means, Naruto replied with unexpected grimness, that we need to create a new entrance. He stepped back from the rock face, gesturing for the others to move further away. Once they'd retreated to safe distance, he brought his hands together in a series of complex gestures, fingers weaving patterns too rapidly for conventional sight to follow. Earth style. Seismic pressure point, he announced, voice resonating with power. He struck the mountainside with his palm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low rumble built within the stone, vibrations intensifying until the entire ravine trembled. Cracks spread outward from the impact point, widening into fissures that penetrated deep into the mountain's substance. With a sound like thunder trapped underground, a section of cliff face collapsed inward, revealing a darkened passage beyond. Dust billowed outward, momentarily obscuring visibility until Naruto made another gesture that seemed to command the particles to settle unnaturally quickly. Subtle, Ghislaine commented, raising an eyebrow. Effective, Naruto countered without apology. Though whoever tampered with the entrance will certainly notice. They approached the newly created opening cautiously. Beyond lay a tunnel that quickly transformed fro. Rough-hewn passage to worked stone corridor, ancient construction evident in precisely fitted blocks without mortar. Most striking was the crystalline growth that had overtaken much of the interior faces, translucent formations that ranged from pale blue to deep purple, some seeming to pulse with inner light. The fragment's influence, Elinalize explained, noting Ghislaine's cautious examination of the crystals. Its energy leaks despite containment, gradually transforming its surroundings. Don't touch the formations directly, Naruto warned. Even brief contact can initiate crystallization in living tissue. He created another light sphere similar to the one he'd used in the temple, though this one emitted golden-red illumination rather than pure gold. Its light revealed the passage extending deeper into the mountain, descending at a gentle angle. Before we proceed further, he said, turning to address them directly, you need protection. From within his clothing, he prod. UCED small objects, pendants of some dark metal inscribed with symbols similar to those that occasionally appeared on his skin during moments of power usage. He distributed one to each companion except Elinalize. Wear these against your skin, he instructed. They'll resist the fragment's crystallization effect to a degree, though not indefinitely. If you feel numbness or see your skin hardening, retreat immediately. Ghislaine slipped the pendant around her neck, surprised by its warmth against her skin. The metal seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, creating an unusual but not unpleasant sensation. What about you? She asked, noting Naruto wore no similar protection. I carry my protection internally, he replied cryptically. Kurama's energy counteracts most external influences. Thus protected, they proceeded deeper into the mountain. The passage wound downward in gradual spirals, crystalline growths becoming more prevalent and elaborate as they descended. Some formations had grown large enough to partially obstruct the tunnel, requiring careful navigation to avoid contact. The original builders incorporated the crystal formations into their designs, Elinalize observed, indicating patterns that suggested deliberate arrangement despite their organic appearance. They saw beauty in the fragment's influence rather than merely danger. Dragon perspective, Naruto acknowledged. Transformation rather than destruction. Change rather than ending. After nearly an hour's careful descent, the passage opened suddenly into a vast cavern whose dimensions escaped immediate comprehension. Their light source, powerful as it was, failed to illuminate the chamber's furthest reaches or highest points. Most striking was the crystallization that had overtaken everything, floor, walls, ceiling. All transformed into a glittering wonderland of geometric formations that refracted their light in mesmerizing patterns. At the center of this crystalline cathedral stood a raised platform reached by a narrow bridge that spanned a chasm of unknown depth. Upon the platform rested a solitary object, a geometric structure approximately the size of a man's fist, composed of some material that absorbed rather than reflected light, appearing as a perfect absence within the glittering surroundings. The adamant key, Naruto identified unnecessarily. First fragment of the seven. As they approached the narrow bridge, Ghislaine noticed disturbing details previously hidden by distance and overwhelming visual input. The crystallization hadn't been limited to inorganic materials. Scattered throughout the cavern stood what could only be described as statues, though their expressions of terror and positions of flight suggested a more disturbing origin. Previous visitors, Elinalize confirmed softly, following Ghislaine's gaze. Those who sought the fragment without proper protection. How recently? Ghislaine asked, examining the nearest figure, a man frozen mid-stride. Face contorted in a silent scream, hand reaching toward an exit he'd never reach. Naruto studied the crystallized form. Decades, at minimum. The complete transformation process takes time. Then whoever tampered with the entrance hasn't reached this chamber yet, Corvin concluded with evident relief. Or retreated upon seeing the fate of their predecessors, Seraphine suggested. Our speculation ended as they reached the bridge's beginning. Unlike the surrounding cavern, this structure remained untouched by crystallization, a narrow span of some black stone that absorbed their footsteps without echo. Dragon-forged pathstone, Elinalize identified with reverence. Completely resistant to transformation energies. And most everything else, Naruto added. One of the few materials that could contain the fragment's influence. They crossed single file, the bridge barely wide enough for one person. Despite its apparent age, it showed no signs of structural weakness, suppo. Rting their weight without tremor or shift. At its end, the platform rose like an island amid a sea of crystals, its surface covered in complex geometric patterns that spiraled inward toward the central fragment. Naruto approached the adamant key alone, instructing the others to remain at the platform's edge. The fragment seemed to respond to his presence, its perfect blackness somehow deepening as he neared. "It remembers me," he said softly, almost to himself. After all this time, with reverent caution, he extended his hands toward the fragment, palms upward in a gesture that appeared ceremonial rather than practical. The whisker marks on his cheeks darkened gradually, energy gathering around him in a visible aura of golden light. "I reclaim what was entrusted," he stated formally, voice resonating with unexpected depth. "By right of Maker and Guardian, I call you forth." The fragment rose from its resting place, floating inches above the platform's surface. It rotated slowly, FACETS catching no light yet somehow becoming more visible, its geometric complexity revealing itself as it turned. "The seal releases," Naruto continued, hands shifting to encompass the floating object. "The key awakens." With these words, the fragment's perfect blackness shattered like glass, revealing its true nature beneath the light-absorbing exterior. Inside gleamed a crystalline structure of impossible complexity, a lattice of interconnected geometries that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions, angles contradicting each other yet somehow forming perfect cohesion. "Beautiful," Elinalise breathed, her dragon heritage allowing her to perceive aspects of the fragment invisible to purely human senses. Naruto gestured, and the fragment descended gently into his waiting hands. The moment of contact sent visible energy coursing up his arms, golden light meeting the fragment's multi-dimensional radiance in harmonious reunion. "Sealed once more," he declared, closing his fingers around the object. The glow subsided gradually, the fragment returning to dormancy in his grasp. The retrieval complete, tension visibly left his shoulders. He turned toward his companions. With the first genuine smile Ghislaine had seen from him, an expression of accomplishment tempered with relief. "One down," he said simply. 6 remaining. The moment of triumph shattered as a slow, deliberate clapping echoed through the crystalline chamber. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, reverberating from countless facets until its source became impossible to pinpoint. "Magnificent performance," declared a voice as cold and precise as a surgeon's blade. "Truly worthy of the legendary dragon sage." Miyuki Shiba stepped from shadows that shouldn't have concealed her, materially. Zing on the bridge they had just crossed. She appeared different from their earlier encounter, her diplomatic attire replaced by close-fitting combat gear in Asura's imperial colors, her perfect features harder, more focused. "I must thank you for solving the entrance dilemma," she continued pleasantly. "My agents struggled with those ancient seals for days without success." Naruto's expression closed like a door slammed shut. "You tampered with the vault entrance." "On imperial orders, yes." She advanced along the bridge with measured steps. "Though I arrived too late to witness your dramatic solution." "Most impressive." Ghislaine and the Dragonroad clan members moved instinctively into defensive positions, surrounding Naruto and the retrieved fragment. Miyuki noted this with evident amusement. "How touching," she observed. "The sage has collected protectors in my absence." "What does Asura want with the fragments, Miyuki?" Naruto demanded, voice hardened by disappointment. "You know the dangers they represent." "I know what I've been told," she corrected smoothly. "And what I've been ordered to retrieve." Her gaze focused on the fragment in Naruto's possession, calculation evident in her expression. "His Imperial Majesty requests that you surrender the adamant key, along with information regarding the remaining fragments." "Requests," Naruto repeated flatly. "For now." Miyuki's perfect smile never reached her eyes. "Though I'm authorized to negotiate more aggressively if necessary." As if summoned by her words, movement flickered throughout the chamber, figures emerging from hidden positions among the crystal formations. Unlike the church inquisitors they'd faced earlier, these operatives wore Asura's distinctive military gear, enhanced with technological augmentations rarely seen outside the Empire's borders. "Imperial Special Forces," Elinalise identified tensely. "At least 20 that I can see." 24, Naruto corrected without taking his eyes from Miyuki. Plus whatever she's concealing personally. Miyuki inclined her head in acknowledgement. You always did see more than most, Sage. It's what made you such an effective teacher. Somethi. Ing-like regret flickered across her features. I've often wondered why you abandoned the Imperial Academy. Your students achieved remarkable results despite your premature departure. You know exactly why I left, Naruto replied. Sadness momentarily overtaking anger in his voice. The Emperor corrupted everything I tried to build there. He improved upon your foundations, Miyuki countered. Practical applications rather than theoretical potentials. Weaponization rather than understanding, Naruto corrected sharply. Destruction rather than creation. Their exchange carried rents of personal history that fascinated Ghislaine despite the danger of their situation. Clearly, the relationship between Naruto and the Asura Empire extended far beyond casual encounters or diplomatic recognition. This grows tiresome, Miyuki sighed eventually. The fragment, please. I have no desire to risk damage to either it or you through unnecessary conflict. Naruto's response was measured but unyielding. You know I can't do that, Miyuki. Can't, or won't. Her perfect features hardened. The distinction matters little to my orders. She raised one hand in a precise gesture. Throughout the chamber, Asura's forces shifted from concealment to readiness, weapons trained on Naruto and his companions from multiple angles. Last opportunity for peaceful resolution, Miyuki offered. Consider it professional courtesy from a former student. Naruto glanced at his companions, silent communication passing between them. Ghislaine read his intent clearly. Combat was inevitable, protection of the fragment took priority over confrontation. You were always my most brilliant student, Miyuki, Naruto said, voice softening with genuine regret. Which is why I know you've calculated your actual chances of success here. Something flickered behind Miyuki's perfect composure, uncertainty, or perhaps recognition of truth she'd been avoiding. Before she could respond, Naruto made a single, sharp gesture with his free hand. Hiraishin, he commanded. Golden light flared around their small group with blinding intensity. Ghislaine felt the now familiar sensation of Naruto's transportation technique activating, reality blurring, stomach lurching as space compressed and expanded simultaneously. The crystalline chamber vanished, replaced by open air and starlight. They materialized atop a mountain peak several miles from the vault, cold wind whipping around them with unexpected ferocity after the cavern's still atmosphere. That won't delay her for long, Naruto stated, already moving. Miyuki's dimensional shifting abilities nearly matched this technique. Where are we going? Corvin asked, orienting himself to their new surroundings. Northwest, toward the Beast Nation border. Naruto secured the fragment within his clothing as he spoke. We need distance and allies before Asura mobilizes fully. The Blacksmith's Guild, Elinalize recalled their earlier discussion. For the second fragment, precisely. Naruto's expression remained troubled despite their successful escape. Though our encounter with Miyuki confirms what I feared, the Emperor knows far more about the fragments than he should. Someone has been feeding him information. From where? Ghislaine asked. If the archives were secure until today. There are other sources. Naruto's gaze turned distant, focused on memories rather than present surroundings. Ancient texts scattered throughout the continent. Surviving dragon descendants who might be coerced or convinced to share knowledge. Or betrayal from within trusted circles, Elinalize suggested reluctantly. Naruto nodded grimly. Always a possibility when immortality stretches relationships across centuries rather than decades. They set off across the mountaintop, making better time now that descent replaced ascent. As they traveled, Ghislaine found herself reflecting on the fragments of history she'd witnessed today. Ancient temples and forgotten knowledge, personalities spanning centuries, conflicts rooted in events beyond her understanding. The Sword Queen she'd originally sought now seemed both more and less than legend had suggested. Not merely a weapon of power, but a key to something larger, something fundamental to this world's structure and balance. And Naruto himself, neither fully god nor man but something unique. Carrying burdens and knowledge accumulated across multiple worlds and countless lifetimes. You're thinking very loudly, Naruto commented, dropping back to walk alongside her as they navigated a particularly treacherous section of mountain trail. Trying to assemble pieces of a puzzle when I don't know what the completed picture should look like, she admitted. Few ever do, he replied with unexpected gentleness. Even I see only fragments of the whole, despite centuries of trying to understand. Yet you created the sword, Ghislaine pointed out. Surely its maker comprehends its purpose completely. Naruto's expression turned contemplative. Creation often exceeds its creator's understanding. The sword became more than I intended, as most worthwhile things do. And its purpose, beyond being a key, he studied her with those ancient eyes that seemed to shift between human and something other. Balance, he finally said. When forces of destruction rise, creation must answer. When chaos threatens to overwhelm, order must respond. And now chaos rises again. His gaze turned toward distant horizons, seeing threats still hidden from others. The void fragments awaken. The sword must be reforged to maintain the balance. With you as the blacksmith once more, Ghislaine surmised. A smile touched his lips, tinged with irony and something deeper. History repeats itself in unexpected ways. I forged the sword once to save this world. Now I must reforge it for the same reason, though the threat wears a different face. The Ashen Emperor, among others. Naruto's expression darkened. Power attracts those who would misuse it. Always has, across every world I've known. Their conversation paused as they navigated a particularly difficult descent, requiring full concentration on treacherous footing. When they resumed easier travel, Ghislaine found herself asking the question that had been forming since their encounter with Miyuki. What did you teach at the Imperial Academy? Surprise flickered across Naruto's features, followed by something like appreciation for the unexpected query. Balance, he answered after consideration. How to channel energy without being consumed by it. How to find harmony between opposing forces rather than allowing one to overwhelm the other. And the Emperor corrupted these teachings. He emphasized dominance over harmony. Control rather than cooperation. Ancient sadness colored his voice. He took techniques designed to enhance understanding and perverted them into weapons. Like Miyuki's abilities. Exactly. Her dimensional shifting was originally a meditation technique, a way to perceive reality's multiple layers without becoming lost between them. Under the Emperor's guidance, it became a method for infiltration, assassination, and theft. They continued in thoughtful silence for some time, each processing the implications of their conversation. Eventually, Elinalise called for a brief rest, the group having covered significant distance since their escape from the vault. As they paused on a sheltered ledge overlooking moonlit valleys, Naruto removed the fragment from within his clothing, examining it with critical attention. In the open air, its crystal lattice structure caught starlight in mesmerizing patterns, refracting illumination that shouldn't have existed in the darkness. The first piece, he murmured, turning it carefully in his hands. The foundation upon which the others build. What happens when all seven are gathered? Ghislaine asked, watching the fragments' hypnotic light play. They resonate with each other, creating patterns that open pathways between possibilities. Naruto's expression grew distant, remembering rather than theorizing. When properly aligned, they form a matrix that can separate realities without destabilizing either. A key between worlds, Elinalise elaborated. What once allowed dragons to travel between dimensions without causing catastrophic damage to the boundaries. And in sword form, Ghislaine pressed, still connecting this abstract concept to the legendary blade she'd originally sought. In sword form, it channels that same power through focused intent. Naruto carefully wrapped the fragment. The blade doesn't cut matter, it cuts possibility, separating what is from what could be. The explanation should have clarified, yet somehow deepened the mystery instead. Before further questions could form, Javan returned from his scouting position at the ledge's edge. Movement below, he reported tensely. Multiple groups converging on our position from 3 directions. Imperial forces, Corvin asked, rising immediately to readiness. Mixed, Javan replied. Asuri uniforms from the east. Church insignia from the south. The western group carries no identifying markers I could discern. The third faction enters the game, Naruto murmured, seemingly unsurprised. Right on schedule. You expected this? Ghislaine asked incredulously. The pattern repeats throughout history, he replied, securing the fragment and gesturing for immediate departure. The sword calls to power. And power responds predictably. Church, Empire, and Shadow, each seeking control for their own purposes. Shadow. Ghislaine questioned as they resumed their journey at accelerated pace. Those who operate beyond official recognition, Millis explained. Neither religious nor governmental, but equally determined and often more dangerous for their lack of constraints. They altered course to avoid the converging forces, though Naruto's expression suggested he considered direct confrontation inevitable, merely delayed. Their path now led deeper into mountain wilderness, away from established routes and toward territories rarely traversed by humans. As false dawn lightened the eastern sky, they found themselves descending into dense forest that marked the transition between mountain highlands and the Beast Nation's northern territories. Here, ancient trees provided concealment that open ridges had denied them, though progress slowed accordingly. "We'll rest here briefly," Naruto decided as they reached a small clearing beside a tumbling stream. 2 hours maximum before continuing northwest. Exhaustion had begun to show even in Millis's typically composed features, her clansmen settling gratefully at this unexpected reprieve. Ghislaine, conditioned through years of demanding missions, remained alert despite fatigue pulling at her muscles. She positioned herself at the clearing's edge, establishing a vantage point that offered visibility without exposing her presence. Nearby, Naruto seated himself cross-legged beside the stream, the fragment resting on the ground before him. "You should rest while you can," he suggested without opening his eyes. "I'm accustomed to extended activity," Ghislaine replied, though her body silently protested this claim. "Even the strongest warriors require recovery." A small smile touched his lips. "Trust me, I've learned that lesson repeatedly across centuries." "What are you doing?" she asked instead of arguing further. "Communing with the fragment," he explained, hands positioned on either side of the crystalline object without touching it directly. "Re-establishing connection after centuries of separation." "Can it respond?" "Not in words, but in resonance, in memory, in patterns of energy." His expression turned contemplative. "Each fragment retains impressions of what it has witnessed while sealed away. Information that might prove valuable." Curiosity overcame fatigue as Ghislaine approached, seating herself nearby to observe this unexpected technique. The fragment had begun to pulse, with subtle light that synchronized with Naruto's breathing, inhale brightening, exhale dimming in perfect rhythm. "What does it show you?" she asked softly. "Visitors," Naruto replied, voice distant as if speaking from trance. "Many over centuries, some merely curious, others determined. 3 nearly breached the inner chamber 50 years ago, Imperial researchers testing early dimensional techniques. Miyuki's predecessors, her teachers, more likely." His brow furrowed in concentration. "More recently, systematic attempts to map the vault's defenses. Precise, methodical work spanning months. The tampering we encountered." Quote. Naruto nodded slightly, careful not to break his connection with the fragment. "Directed by someone with extensive knowledge of the original sealing methods. Someone who understood dragon script and containment principles. The Emperor himself," Ghislaine suggested. "No." Naruto's expression darkened. "Someone older. Someone who shouldn't still exist in this world." Before he could elaborate, the fragment's pulsing suddenly intensified, light sharpening from gentle glow to painful brightness. Naruto's hands moved to contain it, golden energy flowing from his palms to surround the crystal in protective barrier. "What's happening?" Ghislaine demanded, hand moving instinctively to her sword hilt. "Resonance cascade," Naruto replied tersely, concentration evident in his strained voice. "Another fragment has been disturbed, the connection between them is activating." The clearing filled with radiance as Naruto struggled to contain the fragment's increasingly erratic pulses. Millis and her clansmen woke immediately, moving toward the disturbance with practiced urgency. "Which one?" Millis asked, her scales gleaming silver bright in the crystal's illumination. "Water temple fragment," Naruto identified through gritted teeth. "The stability matrix. Someone's breached its containment." Deliberately, unmistakably, with visible effort, he imposed control over the resonance, forcing the fragment back to dormancy through sheer will and applied energy. "Precisely timed to our recovery of this piece." The implication hung heavily in the pre-dawn air. Their opponent knew not only what they sought, but where they were at this exact moment. The coordination suggested resources and information beyond what even Miyuki had demonstrated. "We need to move," Corvin stated unnecessarily, already gathering their minimal equipment. "Not yet," Naruto cautioned, still maintaining his restraining field around the now subdued fragment. We're being herded. Ghislaine nodded grimly, recognizing the tactical pattern. Forces positioned to intercept along anticipated escape routes. Precisely. Naruto carefully lifted the fragment, securing it once more within his clothing. Which means we go where they don't expect. Where? Javan asked, youth making his anxiety more apparent than his companions. Naruto's expression shifted to something ancient and determined, the dragon sage of legend rather than the contemplative guide they'd followed thus far. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.